Many times when creating a pivot table, the data range is something that you need to select, but you can add columns to that data range, and that data range won't know that, the pivot table won't know that, and you won't have your data. What we're going to talk about is an automatic way of setting up what is that named range, and then using, like we are here in the slide, that named range as your data table range for the pivot. So using the named range formula below, and where it says pivot data actually refers to the worksheet in Excel that has your information. It will then use a set of offset and counting functions, best to just copy it as is, as per this, but the only thing that you'll change is that pivot data to be changed to the name of the sheet that you're working with. So going into Excel, one of the things to find your name manager is to go to the formulas and then name manager. Once we're in that name manager, we're going to be entering in that offset name. But let's take a look at the data to understand what we're looking at. Essentially, we have data that starts at A1, continues over to O1, and then down all the way to O4822. So the range in this case is A1 to O4822. Now if we added new columns to this in data, it would go to P and Q and R, the range, and we would like the name manager to then very quickly calculate that range and put that into our pivot for any sort of pivoting. So if I can click on name manager now, again this is created, but we'll create a new one and we'll call it test pivot range. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that offset function, and again I'm using payables data, which is the same sheet name as payables data below on the left. Yet I need to be careful in that my name manager needs to have either underscores in it or just be completely together like that pivot range, and again with that in there, hit OK, and that will save it. If I didn't have the underscore, it would actually just say that the name is invalid and you would need to then enter it. So and enter it either an underscore or get rid of the space. So we'll hit the close button. Now I've already done this over in this PVR pivot table just to use as a test here, but what I'm going to do is we want to insert a new pivot table. So I'm going to say insert pivot table, and then into the table range I'm actually going to select or type test underscore pivot range. And when I hit the OK, I can go to the existing worksheet. I'll just go to a new worksheet because I always do, and hit OK. And now that pivot range is set up. Now just watch as if I enter in this payables data a full new column. Let's say we want to enter a new enter field, and we'll call this approver. So the approver of the transaction, and going over to my pivot table that we created, I can then at this point just hit the refresh button. So refresh, you could do it a number of ways. You could go up to your pivot table tools and find it. It's right here, or you could right click and say refresh. Now notice before Strata Lookup was our last field, but now approver has been added. So this name range function is what we can use to capture the entire set of pivot data for analysis.